On the left side of the walk, after leaving the Rotunda, you will see a statue of Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. He is standing on the memorial of the Spanish-American War. Theodore Roosevelt was born on October 27, 1858, into a wealthy family in New York City. Known as Teddy, he was frail and sickly as a boy, and as a teenager, followed a program of gymnastics and weightlifting to build up his strength. Roosevelt embraced a strenuous lifestyle and successfully regained his health. He integrated his exuberant personality, vast range of interests, and world-famous achievements into a cowboy persona, defined by robust masculinity. Following the deaths of his wife and mother on the same day in 1884, he escaped to the wilderness and operated a cattle ranch in the Dakotas. He returned to run unsuccessfully for mayor of New York City in 1886. He served as Assistant Secretary of the Navy under William McKinley, resigning after 1 year to serve with the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. During the Spanish-American War, Roosevelt was a lieutenant colonel of the Rough Rider Regiment, which he led on a charge at the Battle of San Juan. He was one of the most conspicuous heroes of the war. Returning a war hero, he was elected governor of New York in 1898. A frustrated party establishment made him McKinley's running mate in the election of 1900. He campaigned vigorously across the country, helping McKinley win re-election by a landslide on a platform of peace, prosperity, and conservation. The assassination of President McKinley in September 1901 meant that at age 42, Roosevelt had become President of the United States, the youngest president in history at that time. Leading his party and country into the progressive era, he championed his square deal domestic policies, promising the average citizen fairness, breaking of trust using the Sherman Antitrust Act, the regulation of railroads, and pure food and drugs. Making conservation a top priority, he established a myriad of new national parks, forests, and monuments in order to preserve the nation's natural resources. In June 1902, the National Reclamation Act, dedicated to large-scale irrigation projects in the American West, became the first major legislative achievement of his presidency. In addition, Roosevelt set aside almost 200 million acres of land, almost 5 times as much land as all his predecessors combined, for national forests, reserves, and wildlife refuge. In foreign policy, Roosevelt concentrated on Central America, where he began construction of the Panama Canal. Like McKinley, Roosevelt sought to bring the United States out of its isolationism and fulfill its responsibility as a world power. He believed that America should speak softly and carry a big stick in the realm of international affairs, and that his president should be willing to use force to back up his diplomatic negotiations. Roosevelt followed this big stick policy most conspicuously in his dealings in Latin America. In 1903, he helped Panama secede from Colombia in order to facilitate the beginning of construction on the Panama Canal, which he later claimed as his greatest accomplishment as president. He also greatly expanded the United States Navy and sent the Great White Fleet on a world tour to project the United States naval power. His successful efforts to the end of the Russo-Japanese War won him the 1906 Nobel Peace Prize. Roosevelt was elected in 1904 to a full term. During his presidency, Roosevelt successfully groomed his close friend, William Howard Taft, for the presidency. After leaving office, he went on a safari in Africa and toured Europe. Returning to the USA, he became very frustrated with Taft's approach as his successor, trying but failing to win the nomination in 1912. He founded his own party, the Progressive Bull Moose Party, and called for wide-ranging progressive reforms. Frustrated at home, Roosevelt led a 2-year expedition in the Amazon, nearly dying of tropical disease. During World War I, he opposed President Wilson for keeping the U.S. out of the war against Germany, and offered his military services, which were never summoned. Although he planned to run again for president in 1920, his health quickly deteriorated, and he died in his sleep on January 6, 1919, at his family home in Oyster Bay, New York, at the age of 60. Roosevelt has consistently been ranked by scholars as one of the greatest U.S. presidents of the United States. His face adorns Mount Rushmore, along those of Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln.